Beyond and Soaring, our podcast that explores how we might raise healthy kids in a too often unhealthy world. I'm Terry Dubow. I'm the Director of Communications and Story here at Marin Montessori School, and we're going to spend about 20 minutes or so with the great Bill Sneed. He's the Director of Marin Montessori's Junior High. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to finally have you on here.
Yeah.
So recently we both read this article in The Atlantic called How America Got Mean, and it's got that kind of provocative title that makes you read on. So we read on, and I kept thinking about stuff that you've been talking about in terms of building a culture of kindness and respect and generosity and more here at the junior high. And that's not really a time of life when most people are like, oh, that's the time when everyone's kind and sweet. So I'm just going to set the stage, if that's okay. I'm going to read a little bit of this article. And again, it's David Brooks' article. And he starts by referring to some of what we've all likely encountered either in real life or in the feed on our phones. And that's like adults acting with cruelty and rage. And he notes, this is a quote, "Social trust is plummeting. In 2000, 2/3 of American households gave to charity. In 2018, fewer than half did. The words that define our age reek of menace, conspiracy, polarization, mass shoot. I mean, it's not nice. Conspiracy, polarization, mass shootings, trauma, safe spaces. We're enmeshed in some sort of emotional, relational, and spiritual crisis, and it undergirds our political dysfunction and the general crisis of our democracy. What is going on?" That's the end of this little passage. So,
that's a fair question.
Yeah, Bill, jump in. What was your take on the article, and more to the point, like, how do you think it fit with your experience as an educator working with adolescents?
Right. So, first of all, I want to start with this age, right, and the tendency towards this age, because it is an often misunderstood age. And so the adolescent is actually the person who challenges society.
Yeah.
They're the one that look at adults and start to kind of, criticize them based on, they lose their elementary idealism of adults and adults knowing everything. So in that regard, it does present as an age of rudeness and cruelty. It's also an age where you have huge emotional swings and short-term memory. They often forget the things that they've done, but the parents and people that work with them can hold on to them.
Right.
So I view this whole age group as they're asking us to be better all the time. And then we work with them towards civil discourse. Specifically to these quotes that you ask, I mean, I think our teenagers, our adolescents are dealing with a lot. The mass shootings, the fear of going to school is huge for them. Right. Climate crisis, huge for them. And I think that
these kids all went through the pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic. So I think that they're looking at adult society and saying, what are you doing? Because the solutions to these things seem fairly obvious to them and simple. Right. They don't understand the diversity of opinions in our country, for example, or why we're in these situations. They're just can be upset and angry about them. And we can be representatives of the adult world, and they're looking to us for answers, and they're not easy to unpack. So, I'm really lucky to get to work with the age that I get to work with because they do challenge these questions. Okay, my take on the article is it was a fantastic exploration of potential whys to this situation. I think you did a very thoughtful, a lot of research, and lays it out. And while I can't verify that any of the things are true, I think it's really great fodder for conversation. Right? Because I do think we're like, well, how did we get rude as a society? And why is this going on? Why are people taking guns to school? Where have we lost our trust? And I think mostly the distrust here and the things he's talking about are really the adult world. Right. And our children, our adolescents are kind of stuck in this world that have been created for them, and they're trying to make sense of it.
And they're watching it.
They're watching it.
There's the feeds, on their whatever devices, if they have them, or on the internet or wherever it is, adults on planes screaming at each other, and, we don't know if we're amplifying things that have always existed, or we have a new phenomenon where people are just like at their wits' end. So, but I guess my question to you is like, what do you think it says, or how do you think it's affecting teenagers and young teenagers in particular?
Tremendously. I think it's normalizing unhealthy discourse. If you look at a platform like TikTok, where you binge, or they can watch one thing after another, it becomes entertainment. Yeah. And it's entertaining to see these people play tricks on each other or be cruel to each other, and it's laughable for them and they can see it, but then it plays out also in their daily lives with these quick responses or pointing out failures in other people as a source of entertainment. Yeah. And so for the young, for the adolescent, they're tender. And so while one party might think, no, this is just fun and we're having fun, the other person internalizes it completely different.
Right.
Is why are you making fun of me? And so we always get, I'm just joking. It's like, no, you're really not. That's really kind of cruel.
Right.
But they're really tender underneath and they don't want to. So it's a lot of coaching on our part.
Yeah.
But because they see it so prevalent in the adult media, it's hard to get them there quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it's been normalized.
Right. So, the article, again, we're not promoting this article as a source of truth, but it is an interesting jumping off point. It spends a good amount of time identifying the source of this slide in manners and empathy and ethics. It says, Brooks essentially argues that many of us have lost faith in and contact with traditional distributors of values. And it's really not the purview for us to comment too much on that. But from your perspective and for parents out there, what are some of the common misconceptions or hurdles when trying to parent teens through the lens of one's values? Like, how do you become a distributor of values, and how do you help teenagers, adopt that, I guess, in this culture where so often we don't really have those distributors anymore, those levers, as much as maybe our parents did.
So I'd like to pan back just a minute and say that the adults are also kind of moving, right? So society has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And so people are reevaluating their long-held values. Adult society is also trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing and mirroring those behaviors. I think for parents, it's to stay engaged with their children around their values and being explicit about it. This is who we are, how we operate, and why we do it. Not to take it for granted, because a lot of the value systems were kind of culturally held for a long period of time.
Right.
But now that things are, changing for the better.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's spending time with your children. I think it's holding to things, somewhat of those traditions of having conversation around dinner, and not just watching the daily, the nightly news. Because that can be inflammatory, but if you do that, you need to create time to process it and put it into context. Because otherwise, I think you're, exacerbating anxieties around the world, especially if the adult themselves is feeling it.
Yeah.
Because I actually find that Montessori students they're more oriented toward their values.
Right.
And they have it right.
Yeah. So we're going to get to how Montessori, the school's philosophy and your philosophy may help, but do you think that there's something about the way the culture is working right now that it makes it harder to talk about values? Yeah,
I do. I think, again, people are a little bit disoriented and want to say the right thing and are afraid of saying the wrong thing. Having a safe forum for exploring thinking so you can advance your thinking versus you're supposed to already know. We're all fallible.
Right.
And we're all wrong, and we can all misread a situation. But taking the time to process it and be okay with not being perfect and saying, you know what, I was wrong there. I really appreciated what you said about that. And I'm talking parent to child or child to parent, as well as, what we do here at the school.
Right.
So it's really just positive discourse.
Right.
Saying, hey, here's what I want the outcome to be. Here's who we are. How do we get there?
Right. Okay. So with those challenges in mind, let's talk about the Montessori method and how it might offer a path forward. So, I assume our listeners have some sense of what it is, but for young teenagers, can you explain a little bit about how it works?
So we are a community, right, that's oriented in self-construction, meaning people come to school here to discover themselves, discover their ideas, and it's a safe place to be wrong. It's a safe place to make mistakes, but you're held by these values. And so our day-to-day and our weeks are held in ways in which we can all hold each other mutually accountable. And I'm talking like from math class to community council and how we have lunch and how we go through our day. So we want to empower students in leadership, but we also want to scaffold it so they're successful. So like, for example, on Fridays, we sit down and we talk about community issues. But we have to coach them for, again, how to talk about an issue without overreacting.
Right.
Or when a person has a good question that's complicated, taking the time and space to discuss it. Because there is a perception, more so now than ever, that you're supposed to already think a certain thing. But as you're leaving elementary and into adolescence, it's really confusing.
Sure.
Because you are leaving the self-centeredness to move into more of this world. And they mean so much to each other. They're their primary material, and so are we. So without constructive discourse, you don't get anywhere.
Right.
So moving away from a punitive, where you're wrong, or you're this, or you're that, to more of like, well, let's unpack that a little bit more. Let me hear what you think. Because when you create the time to do that, what you discover underneath is everybody wants the same thing.
Right.
And I think you could do that too, panning back out to the political spectrum. I think both sides, if you talk to people, they kind of want the same thing.
Sure.
They just have their brands or the side that they sit on.
Right. So it's almost like, so you build structures, the school has structures that basically allow kids to learn how to have civil discourse.
Correct.
You're not teaching them, like, this is how you
listen.
This is a PowerPoint. This is how you are building structures where they encounter it and then practice it over and over until, and it works.
I think you're always working towards it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're working towards it. And again, it's like repetitive message, like, we can disagree with the ideas, and here's how you can do that, but we're not going to disagree with the person. Mm-hmm. And so that means, when I heard what you said, the idea here's the points that I disagree with, and here's why, versus like, you're just wrong, mm-hmm. or you're bad. Mm-hmm. So the other person gets feedback. And then again, if it's like in a lit situation, you're going to the text for evidence.
Right.
You're moving away from your own social, your own emotional state, and going to something that you can disagree with, because literature is interpretive.
That's my favorite part of being an English teacher for all those years, is that you point to the text, and that becomes in some ways it is a proxy for a value system. You get to talk about it over there, and you're developing your own sense of self. But it sounds like that's kind of what the day to day here.
It's day to day, and then just in daily life, it might look like our lunch routine. Right. So we know that who they sit with really matters. When they sit someplace, they want to sit with someone that gives them some level of comfort, or that they want to hang out with. But how do you do that constructively where everyone has a place to sit, mm-hmm. right? So we have conversations. How do we create an environment where everyone belongs? And what are those? How do we do that? Because they don't really think the same thing. And so if we're running a system that they disagree with, then we can have a conversation. They can tell us why, and we can experiment. Because those are safe places to make mistakes and build yourself up. But again, we're always holding the values of what it should look like. Here's the like measures for success. Success would look like this. Mm-hmm. And then when we get that, then they get independence, and then they get more freedom because they're empowered to have that freedom because they know what it takes, versus just the opposite of that, which is abandonment or over-controlled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for parents wanting to introduce some of these Montessori-inspired strategies at home to counter a culture of insensitivity, what would you suggest that people do in their houses or in the car or whatever?
Well, first, get off your devices and spend time with them. Yeah. Go do activities. There's this confusion around this age group because they want to differentiate from families and become their own people. And it feels like they don't want their parents, but they really do. It feels like they don't want their teachers, but they really do. Yeah. And so they're looking to find all the loopholes and push your buttons and see what makes you react, because they're trying to figure out the adult world. And a lot of adults will recede and go, gosh, that's really uncomfortable, and they don't want to spend time with me. And it might feel like you're forcing them to do a family vacation or forcing them to go on these things, but that makes them actually feel safe. So it's contradictory to the adult's experience, and it's a dance, because sometimes you do have to give them those freedoms, and you do need to give them that space. But they really do want you to have the hard conversations. They really do want you to sit down. So just remembering to talk to them, spend time with them, prepare yourself for those things. And then in situations where they're really, really heavy topics, get professional support on how to frame it. So yeah, I guess the short answer is spend time with them. Yeah. Thoughtful time.
So let me ask about this question, because I'm having flashbacks of my own kids. What's your advice about how to deal with with the kids' insensitivity or cruelty or unkindness towards a parent? right? Because it happens, right? Where kids say, or they may feel because they love the parent, they have a license to be unkind. Do you have thoughts about how to manage that?
Well, so you just would say, that was unkind. And that you're like, wow, you said that? That really hurt me.
Right.
Can you tell me, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Do you really perceive of me that way?
Yeah.
Or are you just frustrated in the moment? Now, this is a lot to ask because parents are not trained to do this.
Right.
But I think it is getting curious, if you will, around that response. And I think it's okay for parents to get angry when they've been hurt and demonstrate. And then, demonstrate the coming back together and say, hey, I got really mad because what you said, I received it this way. Is that what you meant? Partner around it. What is it about me that's frustrating you so much? And then, but also be firm with your lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you wanted to go over to their house and, spend the whole weekend. But I said no because it's no.
Right.
And for these reasons we've discussed. And I can see that it's hurting you.
Right.
So if you can help name their feelings or have them do that. Because, I have experienced that lots of parents are holding really unpopular lines. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing how that has positively impacted their children as they move into high school.
Right.
Right. Because this is the age groups that we work with at the adolescent community are the most vulnerable in terms of setting them up for success at the next level. Mm-hmm. So identifying what your boundaries are, what you want from friendships, what you want from, romantic relationships, what you want from study groups, what makes you feel safe, where you fit in. Those are tremendous values to leave a junior high program and going into high school because it helps you when you're getting peer pressure to do things that you don't necessarily think are safe.
Yeah.
And you want your child to be able to confide in you when things go wrong. So what's the non-judgmental listening and support when they tell you things that are alarming?
Yes. That's the hard part.
It's hard.
Right. My only piece of advice is to marry a therapist because my wife is so good at this stuff, and I would be like, all right, I'm gonna go do the dishes. You should talk to her. And they were able to build, and I through observation and keeping quiet, I learned a lot how to do exactly that. But because you do at the end of the story want them to talk to you. You do. You want to play the long game. Yeah, the long game, not the short game. Right. And if you're not trained, like you said, and if you and your partner, right, have different values too, it can be kind of confusing. Sure. But they really do want to love their parents, and they do want their parents to love and take care of them. Yeah. You're very unique, right, in their lives, and you have a role that we can undersell to ourselves. It is the most important role. It is huge. It is an important role. Yeah. I'm often remember what my wife says about adolescents, which is that they are cats, right? When you come close to them, they may or may not want you to pick them up. They will disappear for 3 weeks, but they come back. Yeah, they'll come back and snuggle when it's time. And then they'll become dogs, and then by the time they're 23, they just want to come home. And how do you know when that's coming, right? And how are you open to that? Yeah, it's a huge ask. Yeah, it is. It's part of the joy, though, is like going through this whole process. All right, so we're going to close here, Bill, but I want to ask you one more question, okay? So can you tell us about what you and your team and the students have done? Just brag a little bit. Tell us what you've done, relatively quickly, about to build a community that's kind of the opposite of this How America Got Mean. I know it's adolescence, so there's going to be unkindness and cruelty, all that kind of stuff. But I know you guys have worked really hard. Tell us a little bit about what you guys have built. Well, I think getting clear around our own boundaries. The school has provided us with outside people to come in and workshop holding boundaries and what routines or support the students. And, we use the word rituals, but that just means in terms of consistency, how a day operates, and rethink, especially post-pandemic, and addressing the behaviors versus hiding from them. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to engage with something sometimes because you're so busy or you're prioritizing your academics or what's coming next. But to take the time to sit down and talk to them and feeling free about that, we work all the time on believing, preparing ourselves to receive them in a way in which we know they're going to have positive outcomes. Mm-hmm. So we approach them with curiosity and remove judgment. Say what we see, and then explore it from there. Mm-hmm. We have advisors who have students kind of assigned to them that they are first line conversations. They spend time with them in the morning and the afternoon. And we have very thoughtful faculty who interact with them throughout the day. We set aside time to check in with them a lot. We meet every morning to talk about things that we're seeing, to create a game plan, an action plan. Mm-hmm. And you and the teachers do.
We do, yeah. And then we do it once a week also. So we dedicate a lot of time to this actual need, because when we're all on the same page, it feels safer for the students. It's consistent. We do a lot of peer mediation where if there's something we sit down and the students talk to each other in a way in which, again, is not judgmental. When you said this is how I felt, and we get the other perspective. And I tell you, all the time, it was a misunderstanding, a common misunderstanding, and they always feel better. Yeah. So trust in the adults is paramount to success. Right. So we're not punitive as much as we are explorative, but at the same time, we do have to hold lines, because when we hold lines and we're consistent, then the students trust us more. Right. So we're building those systems within ourselves, but then the whole day and the whole week is around, you help the children through work. That's where they find their joy, and that's where they find their contribution. So, in this article, he talks about purpose and the loss of a purpose. And I think that's huge in a Montessori school, is knowing why you're there, how you're valuable, how you contribute. So we honor and appreciate any contribution that makes a difference. Right. So, that could be on the farm, that could be in math class, that could be in your leadership. Saying, wow, when you did that, that meant a lot. And as they start to, the word in Montessori is valorization. So as they start to valorize, then you'll find an increased effort in them contributing. Right. And then that's kind of contagious, and other students do it too. Right. So it's the freedom to be valuable, basically.
Well, again, I'm new to this game, but it also seems like you've prepared the environment for them to find moments of where purpose can be, they can find it themselves. And
that's diversity of activities. Yeah. We have a tremendously diverse, program with all kinds of opportunities each day that each person can have value in.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, good bragging. It was a very modest bragging, but we'll take it. All right. That was great. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. The book's article is provocative. We're not saying it's true, but it definitely speaks to something about what's going on in our culture. Appreciate you talking about it. And the article is nowhere near as hopeful as your take. So you and your community are building something rare and beautiful. So wanted to make sure people knew about it. All right. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Remember, you can go to groundedandsoaring.org for the podcast episodes, blog posts, and more. We love reviews and questions, suggestions, so you can find all that stuff there. Feel free to share this with friends and families, and stay connected on our social media channels and all the rest. So again, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, great.